Hey, hi guys. I've got a special guest here with me today, and we are going to continue the conversation that we started last week with Mr. Tino Boone. I've got a very special guest here who I've known for a couple years, and we've been a part of. I met her through church actually, and we've been a part of several different Bible studies and have broken bread quite a few times together. We've kind of bonded over that, and then. Just become fast friends. So I'm excited to introduce Miss Venita Robinson. And
yes.
Nice, yeah. And so we're gonna jump into some stuff. It's been 3 weeks since the George Floyd event happened, and one thing that we don't want to let happen is for us to just become comfortable, I think, with the current situation of the world and sweep it under the rug like we've done so many times in the past. And so the conversation needs to continue. This isn't just a one-time, two-time thing. Needs to be a lifestyle change for us. And I think if we're gonna move the dial on black and white relationships in this country, then we've got to have this conversation. So I'm super excited to have you, Miss Venita. Let's get going, shall we?
Absolutely.
So, Venita, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got here to Columbus.
So I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I grew up and lived there all of my life. And so, grew up in with me, my mom, and my sister, and essentially just found that hard work was the cornerstone of what I was learning from my mom, because she worked like all the time. And so that pretty much pushed me to want to do something outside of what I was seeing more prominently. So I'm a first generation college student. So I went to college at Xavier University, go Musketeers, and pursued a degree in psychology, worked in psychiatry for a couple of years and realized I'm not made for that career. I have all the respect for social workers and psychiatrists and mental health specialists, and then realized that there were a lot of issues, and it's funny now that I'm about to say that, but there were a lot of systematic issues wrong with the hospital and with the department I was working in. And so when I decided to go back for my master's degree, I went in health service administration, wanting to fix the things, fix the structure, fix the policies and the procedures, and ultimately had a couple of other career opportunities. I worked at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and had several career changes. I was there for 10 years and fell in love with quality improvement, which I just recently did a DISC assessment, and that totally makes sense now. And once I decided that that's the career path I wanted to do, I started looking at different careers outside of Cincinnati, because essentially I knew that I wanted to have the opportunity to explore another place, live somewhere else, but I knew that I wasn't going to go unless something like a job put me there. And so I got this opportunity at Nationwide Children's Hospital here, and that's essentially what led me here. I've been here for a little over 2 years now, or no, I've been 2, 3 years.
I think
one of
maybe,
those.
yeah. So next question, and it kind of pertains to that. So you're going to be putting down roots here in a form or fashion. So we're in contract on a house. This is a big step for you. The process of finding this lady a home has been fun. We've seen a lot, but one of the cornerstones of her home search is it's got to have good closet space. This woman is a fashionista. I've never seen her wear the same thing twice. So this next question is our icebreaker, okay? And the question is, name one fashion trend that you hope never comes back, and one that did come back that you wish would not have.
So one that I hope doesn't, well, actually it did come back, is bell bottoms. I wore them because it was part of the time. But then when they started coming back, I was like, no, why do we do that? And then one that I hope doesn't come back. I'm actually not a big fan of tie-dye, and I know that happens like for like events or certain things, but that's just something that I don't foresee myself.
We're not going to see you wearing tie-dye anytime soon. Huh? All right, well, good to know. I've got a couple of friends out there in viewerland who are going to be sad to hear that.
You guys do whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to get into the serious part of the conversation. Describe a couple examples of experiencing racism as a black woman in either Cincinnati or Columbus or wherever you've been.
So not the first, but one of the first instances that I can think of is when I was on a work-related trip, and it was me and 3 other colleagues, and those 3 other colleagues were white, and we showed up to the hotel early, knowing that we may or may not be able to check in, and one of the colleagues went to the front desk, and when I can't remember, there was 3 of us, one was a male, 2 were female, and I can't remember who went first, but whomever went first came back and told the group of us that they're putting us on a list, and as they clean the rooms, they'll call us and put us on a room. And so I went next, and the guy told me that they weren't taking people in because it was prior to check-in. And I was just like, that's interesting, because I thought you guys were doing some sort of list, and he said no. And so I went back, I told everybody, apparently they're not doing the list anymore. And then my other 2 colleagues went up, and they got placed on the list. And so after all that, we're getting together, and they're just like, I wonder why, they didn't, put you on the list. And I just kind of was there yeah, I wonder why. And when I was checking out, I saw the gentleman at the front desk realize that I was with the rest of the group. And so when I was either checking out or I came back to check in after it was time to check in, and he apologized profusely and said I'm sorry about that whole situation. And I remember in that moment thinking I have 2 options. I can't do the we know why that happened, or I can just say it was unfortunate, and I'm checked in now, whatever. And I remember being speechless because I felt like I was in this either go off and look crazy, because what's so crappy about racism is a lot of times it's not overt. And so if you say something about it, it's very easy for people to talk it away. No, it wasn't because of that, it was because of so. Or no, that had nothing to do with it, whatever. And oftentimes it's kind of like the victim being told that they're the person that did something wrong. And so those feelings were definitely there, and the fact that I was on a work trip. And so I also had some resentment towards my colleagues for not saying anything, either amongst ourselves and calling it out, or towards the gentleman and saying something. And so lots of emotions, and ultimately I just ended up just chalking it up as one more time where another unfortunate event. And luckily it was something small, just checking into a hotel, but it was just another reminder that things like that happen on a consistent basis. And if it is happening on something like checking in for a hotel, I can imagine how else it plays out in the workforce or in other situations. That's one that I can think of off the top of my head.
I'm interested. You're dating a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
Has that ever brought upon you any weird conversations or dirty looks, or even conversely for Edmund? Like, what have you witnessed, I guess, from that?
So him and I talk about it all the time. I mean, I feel like we have to. And as far as externally, like, I know that I've had conversations with family and friends, and he's told me about conversations that he's had with family and friends, just about either whether it's like being in an interracial relationship or being with the opposite sex. Or we did have one overt incident when we first started dating. We were like walking hand in hand down the street, and someone rolled by in their car and said, "F your relationship." And but that's the only overt thing that I can think of that we've experienced. We definitely get looks. And I think that when we first started dating it, I kind of pointed out, but now he sees it more often, and I'm just like, I mean, that's my life, so I don't know. He definitely points it out more frequently than I do. But yeah, it's definitely something we talk about, we touch base about on a regular basis, check in with one another, and have conversations too about the fact that he's a white male. If we decide to have children, he'll have brown children. What does that mean for him? How does he feel? So yeah, it's definitely something to talk about.
It's been 3 weeks or so since we said to start the George Floyd event happened, and it feels to me, and I don't watch a lot of news, but it feels to me that maybe things have simmered down a little bit, if you will. So 2 weeks ago we were talking about riots and looting and protests all over the place, and it feels to me like things might be pushed aside a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? Are you feeling similar, or what's your perspective?
I think that I still see the protests happening, and I feel like the attention around the protests has either lessened or simmered down. But I think that one of the things that, I don't know, not necessarily noticed or that's frustrating is that, like, when the conversation around the protests happen, the riots and looting are automatically attached to it. And I think that is the frustrating part, because I feel like the attention around the purpose of the protests gets overlooked because of a few looting and rioting. And I saw a post at some point that equated, like, if you attach the few that are looting and rioting to the protests and then say all protests are bad, how is that different from saying that the few cops that are doing, unnecessary things associated with all cops are bad? And so that's kind of where my head is at the moment. And I've seen some, like, I feel like every single company at some point has made a statement of some fashion. I mean, when we were getting all those messages about COVID-19 and we stand with you, like, similar things are happening in the companies. And I have mixed emotions about that too, whereas, yes, I'm glad that you're recognizing. I also hope that you're actively doing something. And then there, again, is that feeling of, like, where has this been? Why now? And then you go back and forth, like, well, now is better than never. So I hope that what's happening is people are in their planning and action stages now because of the protest that took place.
was your reaction when the video and the news broke about George Floyd?
I was like broken, and honestly, that was the first time I had such a strong reaction. And again, it's one of those pluses and minuses thing. Like, even me as a Black person, like, I've seen so many. I actually try not to watch all of them, and I don't know if that's good or bad. But seeing so many, heard so many stories, and it's like, frustration is usually the first emotion that I experience. But with this one, it was like sadness and despair. And it just felt different. And I think there were a lot of combinations. You could hear people yelling to try to help him. You can actually watch him lose consciousness and die, and nothing happened to prevent it. And my emotions were all over the place that week after I watched it. I think they were just heightened. So if I was sad, and I was really sad. Whereas if I was mad, I was really mad. If I was happy, I was really happy. So it definitely was just, it was very different for sure.
What have been some other events? Like you said, that you try not to watch them all because there are more than one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What other events have made you feel vulnerable or super uncomfortable?
I mean, I would just say, for me, I am a person that likes harmony. And so, although I can be, I don't know if confrontational is the correct word, but I can be in a situation in conflict and be able to speak up and say something, I prefer harmony. And so, another recent thing I can think of is I applied for a new position and realized that my title that I was currently holding was different than everybody else's in the department. And actually, the position I was applying for said senior, whatever, and I was thinking I was going to get a promotion if I applied and got that position. And it turned out I was already a senior person. My title just wasn't reflecting it, and I was the only person in the entire department. And so I'm going through this process. Should I say something? Does it matter? Going back and forth. But then it's why am I the only person that doesn't have the right title? And all these things. And so situations like that is where I feel like it's easy for other people to say that I'm playing the race card. It's really just advocating for myself. I'm just trying to make sure, because I know about the inequalities, I'm just trying to make sure that I position myself in a way where I feel like I am equal as much as society would like me to be, unfortunately. So situations like that where I feel like I have to advocate for myself, and then I feel like, why do I have to always do this?
Has that been resolved yet?
Yes, it was. It was resolved.
Positively?
It was.
Good.
It was. It was a conversation, whereas I was asked, do you want us to change it? And at first I was like, no, it's fine. And then I came back the next day, I was like, no, I want you to change it.
Good.
And they were like, okay.
So we met through church, we've been a part of Bible studies. I know your journey with faith, and so I feel comfortable asking this question. But how has faith helped you so far? So this year's been wacky, right? Mm-hmm. So you go from Tiger King to... I love the meme that says, remember back in 2020 when Tiger King was the craziest thing that happened? To coronavirus, to now, just the spotlight being put on black and white. How's faith helped you through this year thus far?
Man, I think grace has been the overwhelming thing because these type of conversations have been happening a lot more frequently than ever before, and they're exhausting. Like if you have them back to back to back, it can be exhausting. And I think that just having grace and trying to believe that these conversations are happening because people genuinely want to know, they genuinely want to learn, and they genuinely want to grow. And so, sometimes you have to really grace just to think, positively in that light and say that, if someone comes to you genuinely wanting to learn and understand, then why not give them your perspective? And honestly, that's all you can give, because there's this whole fight about not wanting to speak for the whole Black population. But if someone genuinely wants to want me to give my insight, then why not? And that could. I actually had a meeting today that was work related around race, and then another one on Monday, and another one on Friday, and another. And Tuesday, this past Tuesday, talking about it. So it's been a consistent conversation. Just have to tough it out, try to figure out, making sure I'm taking care of myself, but then for the greater good,
Well, I'll say from my perspective, I think a lot of white people are probably in a similar boat as me. So I was with another group of white guys, of course, and we were talking about everything that was happening. And I said, how many Black friends do you have? And we all around the table could count them on less than two hands, unfortunately. And so I think that the conversations that like this that we're having require a lot of vulnerability, which can be exhausting. I totally get that. But on the other side, I think is wisdom and understanding. And in a time where people like myself, who have never had a racist encounter, well, I played basketball in some pretty scary places, but all I'm looking for is better understanding, so that then I can maybe help in some capacity. And one of the things that we want to talk about is a go-do, or something that you can actually tangibly take with you after listening to this or watching this. Faith is important. I think grace is one of those keys. If you don't have strong faith, that might be difficult for you to understand necessarily what that entails. And that leads us to our next question, though. So, moral of the story is, I appreciate you taking the time for this conversation, and know that if nothing else, it's going to reach hopefully at least one more person than just you or myself, and hopefully we can grow this thing through multiplication instead of just addition. And this may not be an easy question to answer, but what do you think is maybe one or two things that are tangible that we can do to try to mend this gap?
I would say one thing, whenever you really want to know about something, you study it, right? And so I think one thing is just there are a lot of resources and books, and there's the internet and all that stuff. So just really understanding where this is all coming from. I think the historical perspective is so critical and crucial. I know, through the church we go through, they did a program called Undivided. In that program, the very first day, they talk about the history associated with systematic racism. And I feel like it's so powerful because it allows you to understand that it's not just police brutality. It's embedded in the entire culture of America. And then how it affects and why slavery is still talked about because the effects are still occurring even today. And so I think that is really important to help understand. So that's the like logical data brain people. And then, conversations like this may be more for the emotional people that learn from emotion. And I think it's just a combination of those. I don't feel like these sort of conversations, they get to the emotional perspective, but I feel like it may not completely solidify the grand scheme of what's been happening over multiple centuries.
That takes us to my last kind of question / point, I guess. I literally just today heard for the first time about Juneteenth, and I was like, what is all this? What's this email about? And then I heard it on the news about trying to become an official like nationwide holiday. And so I did a little bit of research, and I was shocked that like in school we had never heard about this. And can you describe just in a sentence or two what Juneteenth is?
So essentially, after the Civil War, the war to abolish slavery, which is a crazy concept. So there was the Emancipation Proclamation that happened in 1862, and then slaves were finally free in 1865. So 3 years later, and that's essentially what Juneteenth is celebrating. So it's celebrating the freedom of Black people. And so there's usually some conversations, July 4th versus Juneteenth, because July 4th celebrates freedom, but not everyone is actually free on July 4th. And so that is celebrating the freedom of Black people.
So the verbiage that I had read was that it was actually the day that the last slaves were finally free. So that's crazy. We all celebrate July 4th, to your point. So tangible takeaways from this conversation. As Venita said, I think it's great. Last week we talked about like if you're a parent grooming your children, creating a foundation in them of inclusiveness, diversity is good, love your neighbor basically, regardless of what color they are. This week we're talking about knowledge is power, I think, and different types of knowledge. So one would be investigating through resources like books, internet, articles, but also the emotional side. I think the way you said, have the conversation, and hopefully those two things will just broaden your mindset and your knowledge base and provide you with wisdom so that you can go make more Black friends, because Black people are cool. That sounds so like a dad, right? That's all that I have. Any last thoughts, Venita?
The only other thing I would say is that going back to what I said about, sometimes these conversations can be exhausting. So if you are going to go out there and just be like, hey, can I have a conversation with you about how it is to be Black? Just know that that particular person may not be in a space to be able to share. And don't take that offensively, and don't let that be the end of your journey of trying to seek out knowledge.
I love that. Well, thank you, Venita. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Are we allowed to do this? We gotta set good examples.
Yeah. We're like sitting on top of each
I know,
other.
no
here,
mask.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully this is beneficial for you, and share it with a friend. Share it with a family member. Talk to you later. Love you.